stealing cars, breaking into shops, tried speed and then acid, taking heroin, dealing to my friends, cannabis, then went on to speed, ecstasy, coke, busted by the police. But I felt as if God was speaking directly to me. And so at this point, I'm freaked out. So I flushed all my drugs down the toilet. I didn't experience any withdrawals. He prayed for me and I had tears coming down my face. And I felt a peace.
Hello and welcome again to my story. And today Alistair MacPhee has driven up from Birmingham en route for his home in Scotland, and we're so grateful to you, Alistair, for stopping by. So you have an amazing story. I have heard a little bit of it, but tell us your story, please.
Thanks for having me. So I'm from Glasgow. Grew up in a working class family. My mum was from the Highlands and moved to Glasgow with my grandparents. So my mum was a nurse growing up. We lived in Pollokshields, which is in the south side of Glasgow. We stayed in a tenement building. Directly across from us, my grandparents lived. My dad owned scrapyards in the East End of Glasgow. He was a bit of a character, bit of a gangster.
Right.
So growing up, he used to keep guns in the house. He used to keep knives in the house. He liked to drink. He was an alcoholic as well. And so at the time growing up, you don't see, the kind of conflict between my mum. So my mum's a nurse. She's a gentle, kind, caring woman, and total opposite of my dad.
Yes.
And so my dad would be coming home with guns, and he was out in the pub quite a lot and involved in quite a lot of stuff. I think I was 5. They divorced. My mum divorced my dad. She just couldn't take any more of his drinking, any more of his behaviour. And so being so young, I couldn't understand why my dad was leaving me. I think in some way I felt responsible for my dad leaving. So me and my mum moved in with my grandparents, and so I was meant to see my dad at weekends. And so I'd be waiting for him to come and pick me up, to go and stay with him. And I remember I'd be standing at the window watching for him coming, and I'd be there for ages. And my mum would be like, "Son, come away from the window, he's not coming." And I'd be like, "No, he is, he'll be here in a minute, And like, he never was. And so, that like feeling unloved and my dad not wanting me, and then other times he would come and get me and I'd go and stay with him, and like a lot of time I'd be in pubs, I'd be sitting with a can of Coke, a packet of crisps, and that just seemed to be the kind of norm.
Yes.
He was always drinking. I probably seen things that I shouldn't see where he was fighting with people.
Well, fast forward a little bit, because you actually got into the wrong things yourself a bit older, didn't you? How did that happen?
Well, at school, I never done well at school. I always remember being in class. I'd be sitting there and I'd be daydreaming. Probably because of all the stuff that was going on at home.
Yeah.
And like my report card was always the same. Could do better. Easily distracted. It was like never a good report card. I never actually felt good at anything at school. And there's things in school like where I felt like I just didn't fit in. I found it hard to make friends and keep friends back then. Really struggled in secondary school as well. I was bullied for a period, and so I just didn't go to school. And then my mum remarried, and he was a good guy, and worked and we ended up, we moved to a place called Blantyre in Lanarkshire. So I had to move schools. I found that really difficult because I had my friends at secondary, and then I was moving to another area and making new friends, and again I just really struggled with that and continued to play truant, didn't go to school. I'd go into city centre, and a lot of the time I just felt safe being by myself and roaming like the city centre, and I'd go into shops and amusement arcades and play on computers and things, and it just seemed like a safe world for me, because I found when I was at school with bullying and stuff, I could never really settle. I was never able to really apply myself at school. Basically stopped going, and I would go in front of children's panels, the kind of school panels, and then one time, I must have been in 4th year, again I've ended up back in front of the panel. They've gave me the card, and I thought I'm not going back to class, and so I didn't attend, and then I had to go back up to the panel. And I'm thinking, I'm stuffed here. They're going to, I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to maybe take me away or something. And they say to me, so Alistair, how do you think you've done with your attendance? And I blatantly said, I think I've done okay. and they said, yeah, there's been a remarkable improvement. Keep it up. And so what had happened was the school had taken me off the register as having left school. So that was that. I just didn't go back, and left school with next to no qualifications. Got a job in a YTS. That was the kind of youth opportunity scheme back then, and worked as a partsman. And it was at that time I was probably going off the tracks a little bit. So the people I was going around with were other people like me in the city centre, and just getting up to no good, doing petty crime. Ended up meeting these guys down in London who were involved in crime, so I'd be stealing cars, breaking into shops, and that was the start of kind of being involved in crime.
Yeah, so did you meet drugs there as well?
Didn't have any appeal to me at that point. And then I've ended up getting involved with gangs. I was going to football. From there I started getting into more trouble with the police, to end up in police cells more often. And it was probably not long after that, so I would have been 16, so I just left school. I'd been doing the football scene, wanted to try cannabis. I knew like drugs were bad, but I had this curiosity that I wanted to try them. And so the first time I tried cannabis, it was in my friend Pascal's house, and they were having hot knives. So that wasn't really smoking like a cigarette. It was like where you get a bottle, heat up knives, and then burn the cannabis, and the smoke goes up through the bottle. So I thought, that's not really smoking, that's not too bad. So done that, coughed my lungs up, and thought, what was that all about? And then afterwards I felt this feeling, started to find things really funny, and kind of get the giggles, and it all seemed like good fun. And so from that point, I was curious about drugs. I wanted, having had that feeling, I wanted to try it again. And then eventually I ended up smoking like joints with the cigarettes in it as well. And that was probably the gateway. It was like the thing that we knew we shouldn't be doing. So my friends started doing it as well. And it's like, we knew we shouldn't be doing it, but it was like this wee secret thing that we kind of done, and it all seemed like good fun. Tried speed and then acid, and then it was around about that time, and I could see there was this underground dance scene in Detroit, and they're calling it house music, and they were talking about the drugs that people were taking, like ecstasy, and then you could see in the news it was coming to England, and it was coming to the United Kingdom. I arrived at this nightclub, connected with the bouncers on the door. Right away, they've let me into the club, and before I know it, I found ecstasy in that club, and I bought it. It was like £20. I remember looking at this tablet, and it was like a paracetamol, and I thought, I've been robbed. They've probably just stole my £20, and they've given me a paracetamol, which would be good for a headache. Yeah. 3/4 of an hour later, I started to get these feelings. It was like a kind of euphoria, and you know, all my inhibitions had left. I was up on the dance floor dancing, and I wasn't usually that kind of person. I didn't have that kind of confidence, but when I took this ecstasy pill, it gave me the confidence to stand up and dance, and I was talking to girls. I kind of thought I'd found what I was looking for. It made me the person I wanted to be, and of course I wanted to do it all the time, and so that required money. And then I would see the drug dealers making all this money, and I thought, I could do that. So I started out dealing to my friends cannabis, then went on to speed, ecstasy, coke, and I found that I could make some money from that, and that kind of funded that lifestyle. And then I suppose as time goes on, you kind of go in a bit deeper. So at first it's exciting and it's good, but the kind of deeper I went in, I got involved in dealing, I started to see another side of drugs, and you start to see the gangs, you start to see the violence.
Of course, yes.
And it kind of changed things. Then the police become involved, and I ended up at a...
So did that lead to a downward spiral?
From the dealing side of things, I ended up, I was busted by the police. So the drug squad raided a few houses, me and my friends, and I got caught with some ecstasy and some cannabis, and I ended up going to the High Court, potentially looking at a prison sentence. But I think because I was young and it wasn't that much, that I didn't get caught with that much, the judge kind of gave me a chance. I went to prison. At that point I did go to prison. I was remanded, and that was like a really scary time. The first time I was in prison was a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah.
And at that point, I mean, I thought, I don't want to end up back here. But once like my court case was over with, I pretty much continued to keep taking drugs. And so after that, I remember it was 1992, Fat Jim was taking heroin. He had it on the tin foil, and I remember thinking, that doesn't look that bad, and I thought, I liked the smell of it, and I thought I wanted to try it. Even though I knew people got addicted, I knew people died and overdosed, but at the time I thought, that will not happen to me. I'm not an idiot. I'll not be so stupid as to become an addict.
Yeah.
And so the first time I tried it, I coughed my lungs up, and I was sick. I was really sick. But then after that, I felt a kind of calm, and it was almost as if all my problems had disappeared. And after that, I remember thinking after that, what was that all about? I couldn't understand how it made me feel and how people became addicted to it.
Right.
The next day I thought, I want to try that again. And so I've set out to find a dealer, and I've tried it again. And from there, I maybe used it once or twice a week, and then it got more frequent. And before I know it, I'm probably using it every day. 9 months later, I woke up one day and I felt terribly sick. One of my friends said to me, he's like, you need to take some heroin to feel better. He said, you're rattling. And so that was a bit of a shock to me. And then as soon as I took some more heroin, the sickness went.
So you knew then you were addicted?
I knew then that I'd crossed a line that
Yes.
there was no going back from. And that led me to really dark places, where I would end up in prison. I was constantly in and out of prison. As my addiction went on, I started to develop psychosis. I was hearing voices in my head. I tried lots of times to get clean. I'd go into prison. I'd promised when I came out of prison I was going to get clean, sort my life out. I'd come back out of prison. I'd go back around my same old friends, and they would be doing like drugs, and I would end up doing it with them. And then that was me. I was on this merry-go-round to the point. So I'd always end up by myself in the house wanting to die. I couldn't see how my life was going to get any better. I'd been to rehabs, I'd been in hospitals, I'd been in prison, and nothing was keeping me clean. I thought, I'll go to London, I'll start again down there, and I'll build a new life. I would go to London, I'd meet people in London, I would end up taking crack cocaine. Or another time I thought, I'll go to Spain and I'll work in Spain. I'll build a new life there, start again. Went over to Spain, and the only thing that was different in Spain was I drank all the time. And then I started taking recreational drugs, and then I was back to square one. Another time I went to Ireland, thought I'll stay with my family in Ireland, I'll sort myself out there, and end up in prescription drugs in Ireland. And then one of my best plans was I'll go to Holland and stay with my family in Holland, and I'll get clean in Holland and sort myself out. And of course, maybe not the best place to go and sort your life out is Holland. And needless to say, it didn't end very well. Ended up taking heroin and crack cocaine and going about with these robbers in Amsterdam. And I was back to square one. I'm going to try London again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dad's car and I'm going to sell that in London. And that will fund my new life. I met this guy and he said, can I come with you? So I dropped him at Rutherglen, he gave me the £10 and he said, why don't you come up to my house and take some coke a couple of lines before you go? I didn't feel fit enough to drive. And when I'd went into his house, I noticed a table in the corner of the room beneath the window, and on top of the table there was a Bible sitting. And so at the time I thought, oh, he must be a bit mad, like into the Bible. And so he let me stay that night. And the next day he said, I have to go out to work, I'll be back at like 3 o'clock if you want to wait for me. I'm having a cup of coffee, I'm reading this paper, I'm taking this bag of heroin, and I've looked up from the paper and I've looked over to this table with the Bible on it. And I'm staring at it and it was like a voice in my head saying, go and pick it up. And I'm thinking, not a chance am I going to pick that thing up. And so I'm wrestling with this thought, and I kept looking up, and then eventually I thought, I'm just going to have a look. Mm-hmm. And so I went over, I picked the Bible up, and I could open it anywhere, and I opened it up, and it was in the book of Proverbs, and it was one of the times I had the most profound moment of my life, where I felt as if God was speaking directly to me, saying, this is what's happening to you, this is why it's happening to you. And so at this point, I'm freaked out, and I slammed it shut, and I'm sitting, and then it was like a voice in my head again saying, I can help you. And so from that moment on, I couldn't stop thinking about God. And then I began to wonder if there was a God, whether he might just help somebody like me. And so I made the decision that afternoon, I was going to go back home, I was going to give my dad his car back, I was going to apologise, I was going to hope that he was going to forgive me and let me stay. I said to him, I said, listen, thanks for letting me stay, but I'm going to go back home. By the way, I had a look at your Bible. So he said, my pastor gave me that Bible 13 years ago when I came out of prison. I'm backsliding. He said, so I want you to have the Bible. And so he's gave me his Bible, and off I went, back home. With this Bible, apologised to my parents. Thankfully, they took me back in again. And so from that moment on, I couldn't stop thinking about God. Then I started to think about Christians, and I thought, Christians, that's all the happy clappers.
Yes.
And then it's like, I thought, why are they all so happy? Because at that time, that's all I wanted to be, was happy. And so I didn't know any Christians. So for months I was just reading this Bible. I'd be reading Proverbs, I'd be reading the Psalms, I'd be reading Paul's letters, I'd be reading some of the Gospels. So I was doing this for months, and then one day I'm in the West End and I see this guy helping somebody. And I kind of thought to myself, oh, he might be a Christian. I asked him, I said, excuse me, are you a Christian? And he said, no. and I happened to say it, I said, do you know any? And it turned out his next door neighbour's a born again Christian. I must have been there for about 2 hours, and I've just offloaded all the stuff that was going on for me. And he said, can I pray for you before you go? And I said, please do. And so he prayed for me, and I had tears coming down my face. And I felt a peace. And it was almost at that point as if everything was going to be okay. And then he said to me, he's like, why don't you come to church with me on Sunday? He said, I'll pick you up and I'll drop you off again. And so I said, all right, I'll go. And so went to church that Sunday, went to a church called Destiny in Glasgow. And I remember going along and feeling like so uncomfortable. Like everybody kind of looked really happy, and they were really kind of chatty and welcoming. And then when the service started, like they were all clapping to the music, and some people had their hands up, and you know, I thought, what is going on here? And then when the pastor started to speak, he started to speak about God in a way that I'd never heard before. How he was my Father in heaven, that he loved me so much, that he had a plan for my life, that he was desperate for an intimate relationship with me. And at the end, the pastor asked if anybody wanted that kind of relationship with God. And like my hand, without even thinking about it, just went up. And so I said a prayer after that, and I asked God to save me. And then I've kind of left church, and you don't really think. I didn't really think much after that. And then I decided, because I was just so hungry to know more about God, so I'm constantly reading my Bible, I'm constantly praying and asking God to prove that he was real in my life. And then, you know, I said that prayer, and I was making a decision I was going to get baptised, because I thought I'm just wanted to really know God in a way. And I knew from that first time I went to church that if I stuck around long enough, I was going to find God. And that's what I kind of done, I just kept turning up. And then so a couple of months later, after the pastor had prayed for me, I woke up one day and I decided I was just going to flush my drugs down the toilet. And I did that, so I flushed all my drugs down the toilet. It was at that point where I didn't experience any withdrawals. So like the next day, that night and the next day, I didn't experience any withdrawals. And I was starting to sleep every night, and I thought, that could only be God. Because my experience before being in prison, I'd go through really bad withdrawals. My legs would be sore, my stomach would be sore. Yes. I'd be sweating, I'd be so sick for weeks at a time. And so that for me was like God saying, do you believe me now?
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's when I kind of went from my head to my heart. And I just knew God was real in my life. And so from there, I got involved in the church. I started kind of serving and being part of different teams. I'd go in and I would help clean, I would hoover, I would help paint and just do odd jobs. And I started to make new friends, started getting to know the leaders, went back into education. Found out that I actually wasn't an idiot. I actually had a brain. I just had never applied it.
Yes.
And then eventually I went on to study accounting. Found that I had a head for numbers, and I had this like, you know, this sense where I studied all the time. Like I worked hard. And I would like study night and day. I would study weekends. I would study holidays. In the summer, I'd been a part of my books. And then in my exams, like my graded unit, I got an A. And I'd never had an A for anything in my life. And in school, I never done well. And so that was, you know, that was that. And I was volunteering. I was kind of helping. Like through volunteering, I was kind of helping guys that were coming out of prison. And kind of giving them kind of jobs to do in the project I was volunteering in. And so from there I was on that career path. And so after I'd done my HNC, I wanted to do an HND diploma, and I got told that there was no funding. Right. And so I remember feeling so disappointed. I thought, what am I going to do now? And so a couple of weeks later, my pastor came up to me in church. And he said, Ali, he said, would you come and share your story at the Journey conference that's coming up? A couple of weeks after the Journey conference, after I shared my story, my pastor came back up to me again and he said, Ali, he said, somebody's heard your story at the conference and they want to help you. They want to pay your tuition fees for the next few years to do a professional qualification.
Oh, amazing. That's lovely. Yeah.
And he said, they also want to remain anonymous. They don't want you to know that they're paying your fees for you. So if you give us the invoices, we'll make sure that they're paid. So I had tears come down my face. I couldn't believe that somebody would do something like that for me. That somebody believed in me that much, yes, that they would do that. Yeah. And so I continued to kind of work hard and studying all the time. And also at that point, I'm a good few years into recovery. I'm doing quite well in life. So I was kind of hoping to get a job, meet a nice Christian girl, and then I'd be applying for jobs thinking I'm a good fit for the organisation. I've got the skills, experience, the qualifications, and then I would get like an email saying I'd been unsuccessful. I'd be so disappointed. And then I'd be going to church on a Sunday, I'd be going to small groups during the week, I'd be volunteering, and then I wasn't meeting any nice girls. And I'd be like, God, what's going on? Can you not see I'm ready? And God must have been like, Ali, going to shut up. And so I continued to work hard. And then I remember I was praying, and it was February 2014. And I felt I had another profound moment, a bit like the one I had in Rutherglen, where I felt God saying to me, by the end of the year, you'll have a job and you'll have met somebody. And so I'm thinking, that sounds like a good plan, God.
Yes, lovely promise.
So that year I graduated in September. 2 weeks after I graduated, I got a job working in finance with a charity. 2 weeks after I got the job, I got a text. Claire Bell, that's that nice blonde girl from church. I wonder what she wants. Congratulations on graduating and getting a job. I'd love to catch up and hear all about it. And so we met 2 weeks later, met for a coffee, met for another coffee a couple of weeks later after that, and then we got married in Hogmanay.
Wonderful,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And so today I work as an accountant in the Housing Association. I started my own accountancy business. I'm involved in different charities. I'm the treasurer for a charity that helps people with addictions and homelessness. I've also helped set up a couple of charities that work with people from addictions, mental health, trauma.
Yes.
And more recently, I get invited into prisons to share my story.
It's a very powerful story, and I love the way that God was on the case. He was looking for you, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And even to have that Bible there and you turn it up at that particular point. I mean, it's lovely to see God working all through your life.
Yeah.
Just amazing. So now you're able to help other people and understand their situation because you've been there yourself.
God will help anybody if they ask him. And so I try and use my story. I try and be creative with my story in a way that will engage with people and hopefully inspire them to come into that relationship with God and make some changes in their life that's, regardless of where you've been or what you've been through, there's another way. And God's got a plan for everybody's life.
So Alistair, out there are people who are in addiction and in difficulties. How would you encourage them?
So 2004, my journey started with a prayer where I asked God to save me. And maybe you're sitting here today and you're in that place where you need God to come into your life and save you. And all you need to do is start with a simple prayer. So if I can pray with you and for you, you could even pray along. Father God, I come before you and I admit I'm not perfect. I'm sorry that I made a mess of things. And I'm asking that you forgive me for all the damage that I've done. And right now, God, I'm opening my door so that you can come in. And I'm asking that you come into my life and start to rewrite my report. And right now, God, I'm asking that you would walk with me all the days of my life. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Alistair, thank you so much for dropping by. You know, your story is so impactful and we're so grateful that you've shared it with us today. So many thanks.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.